Hey friends, I wanted to share with you today about Faith's life. Those of you who are new, maybe don't know, but I think a lot of you do because I think that's why many of you have started following me recently, is because you saw the beautiful slideshow honoring and commemorating my daughter's life. And I realized as I was reading some comments that the slideshow doesn't give a lot of information about who Faith was and the fight that she fought. And so today I'm going to share with you guys what the last year has been like, what the journey that I and my family have walked as we fought for Faith's life. And so I'm just going to dive into it and share with you from my heart. I don't really have any notes. I'm just kind of winging it here. But I really felt like, especially after seeing some comments, that it'd be really good and it's kind of important to really share what happened and what happened. So additionally, the journey started about a year ago, roughly, when I got pregnant. About a year ago is when I found out I was pregnant with Faith, and I was so excited. At the time, I didn't know it was a girl. I didn't know her name was Faith, but I was really excited to be expecting again. I love babies. I have 2 living children. Faith has 2 older siblings, a brother and a sister, and I was so excited. It was an interesting season because we were in the process of trying to buy a house, which ultimately ended up falling through. We didn't end up purchasing it. But we were trying to do that, so it was very busy. And so right as I'm in the middle of doing all of these things, trying to buy a house and working, as well as caring for my 2 children, who I've already had, found out I'm pregnant and have first trimester morning sickness, all the things. One of the things that was super interesting was there was, from the get-go, such an interesting, surreal feeling about this pregnancy with Faith. There was just this out-of-body experience. Like, it almost didn't feel real. Like, I had the positive test. It was a very clearly positive test. I knew I was pregnant. I had all the symptoms. But at the same time, it almost didn't feel real. And it was just interesting. And I remember struggling with that a little bit, going like, why does this feel so different? The pregnancy from the get-go felt different than my previous pregnancies, including my previous miscarriages. I've had 5 miscarriages. I had 3 miscarriages before giving birth to my daughter, my oldest living child. I had 4 miscarriages before giving birth to her. And then I had another miscarriage in December of 2021, right before, literally like 2 months before I conceived Faith. And those pregnancies were all early term miscarriages that occurred prior to the 8-week mark. And those pregnancies there was things that felt different that kind of made almost having the miscarriages not super surprising. But this didn't feel like the miscarriages felt. This didn't feel like the pregnancies with my living daughter and son felt. It just felt different. It's very hard to explain. In retrospect, I kind of feel like it was almost like the Lord starting to prepare my heart to know to walk through what we're walking through now and having her not be on this earth. So found out, we were really excited walking through this season. The first trimester went relatively smoothly. Everything seemed normal. I was healthy, fine, great. Started planning for our birth, hired a midwife, and we're really excited to find a midwife that I really, really felt connected to. And then we went in for our routine 20-week ultrasound, and that's really when things started happening. Actually, let me back up. Around 8 weeks, when I was about 8 weeks pregnant, I always pray for my babies, and as I'm pregnant, especially, just really seek the Lord for what to be praying for these babies. Every child is different. They have different personalities, different bents, different things about them that make them special and unique and fun and wonderful. They're made uniquely in the image of God. And so at the beginning, so when I'm pregnant, one of the things I pray for, I mean, I always pray for my children, period. But when I'm pregnant, one of the things that I really pray for my children while they're in utero is seeking the Lord to find out, like, what do I pray for this baby? And at around 8 weeks, I felt this impression in my heart as I was praying for my child. I had a sense that she was probably a girl. I just kind of felt like she was a girl. And I also, one day in my quiet time with the Lord, I just felt the name Faith impressed upon me. That's just what I kept hearing, is Faith. And I was like, okay, Lord, is this her name? Because this is something I'll probably share maybe I'll share this some other time, but both of my older children were named by the Lord. I mean, all of my children have been named by the Lord. I didn't pick their names. They were given to me by the Holy Spirit. And so those are stories for another time for my other children, but that same thing happened like with my oldest living daughter, my son, around 8 weeks approximately is kind of around when I was given names for them. Same thing happened with Faith, because around 8 weeks I felt this name implanted in my spirit, Faith, and I was like, okay, that's a pretty name. I mean, I love it. It kind of goes along with what we are preferring with our children's names, and it's a beautiful name. It happened to be a family name on both sides of our family, and both my husband and I have, it's a family name. And so I was like, yeah, okay, that sounds good. I kind of thought it was maybe going to be a middle name. So, I shared with my husband, like, hey, I kind of feel like Faith needs to be a component of this child's name. And my husband was like, cool. But anyway, so that was in my spirit, but I kind of thought it was a middle name. So I spent several weeks, between 8 weeks and 20 weeks, spent a lot of time kind of thinking about, like, what should the first name be? There were a couple that came into mind and that I was thinking about that I liked, but none of them really fit, really. I just wasn't sure. So come to the 20-week ultrasound. Routine ultrasound, we think, as we head into the clinic. And we get there, typical, those of you who've either been pregnant or had children, maybe your father, maybe your mom, whatever. You kind of know how it goes if you've been there. But you have the goop put on your belly and the tech goes in and starts scanning. And she was super friendly and super chatty, and she was asking us questions, and we were talking and laughing and having a great interaction as we were looking at pictures of, watching our baby on the screen. We were able to see, my husband came with me to this appointment. And then all of a sudden, I noticed she got kind of quiet. And, she was still kind of talking, but it was definitely, I could tell, like, there was a shift in the energy, that she was quiet, quieter, less chatty, less light. It was a heavier shift of energy. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. And she, quickly finished up the scan, like, quickly, and then left. And I turned to my husband and I was like, I think she saw something. There's something. He's like, what? Like, what? I was like, no, did you notice that she got real quiet? Like, she got really quiet. And he was like, oh yeah, I thought it was just maybe she was busy. I was like, no, I think she saw something. I think there's something going on. And he was like, okay. He didn't really believe me. And the doctor comes in and he kind of starts going over the, like, things that look good. Then he kind of gets to the, hey, there's actually something serious though. And he told us that they saw a diaphragmatic hernia. So the condition that Faith had was a congenital diaphragmatic hernia. Basically what that means is that, in, like, layman's terms, her diaphragm didn't close all the way. So the diaphragm is, some basic biology, right? The diaphragm is the muscle between the chest cavity and the abdominal cavity, and it's kind of like a little wall. It's important to help with breathing. But it also is a little wall that keeps the organs in the right spots. So in your chest cavity, kind of protected by your ribs, should be your heart and your lungs. And that's it. Those are the only organs that should be up there. Below your chest cavity is your abdominal cavity, and it's separated from your chest cavity by the diaphragm. In the abdominal cavity, that's where you have your stomach, your intestines, your spleen, your liver, your kidneys, all of your digestive organs, and your reproductive organs. So she had a hole in her diaphragm. That's basically what happened. There was a hole in the diaphragm, and ultrasound, you can't tell how big it is. They didn't know. The doctor said, her stomach is definitely up there. We for sure can see her stomach. We can't really tell beyond that, like what's lung tissue and what's intestines and what's going on. But this is a serious issue that can inhibit her development. And I mean, it can be life-threatening. It definitely is life-threatening if it's not dealt with properly. But he also gave us a lot of hope. It was kind of like, he's all, it kind of looks like in the midline severity, it's one of those where it's like, if it's not dealt with, it could be life-threatening, but if it's dealt with, then most kids make a full recovery. So that's kind of the vibe we got. Obviously that was hard news. Not news that you want to hear when you're in an ultrasound. You don't want to hear that your child has something wrong with them. So we went home, and the doctor said that he was referring us to UCLA. We live in California, and UCLA is the closest hospital to our home that allows us, that is equipped to handle this. And UCLA is it's a distance away from us. It's a several hour drive from where we live, but it's the closest place that is equipped to handle this type of a birth defect. So we were referred to UCLA for a scan, and I went there, and they scanned and said that, they saw the same thing. They confirmed the diagnosis, and the initial scan, the initial appointment we had, they definitely had a pretty bleak outlook. They did say that they didn't think that she would make it. However, I decided, I really believe that life is life, and life is important, and that a baby is a life. It was recommended to me to abort. That was the recommendation or the suggestion of the UCLA doctor, but that is something that I would never do, ever. And that's a very strong conviction that I have. I believe abortion is wrong, and there's no condemnation if that's something that you've chosen. But it is wrong. It's murder. And so I was like, no, I'm not. Like, I'm going to give her every chance in life that I can. Like, if I'm going to keep this baby, I'm keeping this baby, and I'm going to fight for her life. And I did. And I went through all the scans. I did all the things I was supposed to do. I took care of myself as best as, did everything I could to stay healthy. And everything looked great. And as she grew, things looked better from what we could see from the scans. We started being able to see some lung tissue in some areas. She was a good size. She was growing. She was very active and moving. And then one thing, backtrack again a minute, sorry. When at that first scan, when we found out that she had the hernia, I knew immediately. I was like, oh, her first name's Faith. It's her first name, because Faith is what's going to have to get us through this, regardless of the outcome. And so we plodded on, and I went through, there were so many things that happened over the course of this pregnancy. Not, every 2 weeks I was having scans for a lot of it. And then towards the end, it was every week I was being seen by someone, whether it was my midwife or a doctor in UCLA or a doctor up here. There's just all the things that we were doing. And so that went very quickly. At the same time, we also moved. We had been living in a apartment, 2-bedroom apartment upstairs, no yard, tiny little place. Wonderful place. We loved living there for 7 years, but was no longer conducive to our growing family with 2 very active toddlers and a 3rd one on the way. So we ended up renting a house. The purchase of the house that we were trying to do when I got pregnant fell through. We weren't able to purchase, but we ended up being able to rent a different house, which actually ended up being so much better. And so we moved when I was 7 months pregnant, almost 8 months pregnant. That was in September because Faith was born in November. So literally we moved at the end of September. I was in my new rental house for a month and then had Faith. And so it was a very fast season, and it just was filled with a lot of prayer and a lot of prayerful, just taking the next step and having to really learn how to be in the moment. I couldn't plan ahead. There was no planning ahead, really, because everything really depended on week to week. How was Faith doing? Was she still growing? Was she still healthy as far as we could tell besides the hernia? There were no other health issues that we were able to identify besides the hernia, which obviously is a big issue, but while in utero, it doesn't really matter a whole lot because she gets her oxygen from me. It was once she was born that was going to be a concern. So while she was in me, she was fine. And so just this week to week, is she still growing? Is she still functioning well? Is her brain growing? Are her limbs growing? And is everything else doing what it's supposed to do besides that diaphragmatic hernia? And so each appointment, it was yes, yes, yes. And so we get to the point where my due date, 40 weeks, is November 17th. But the doctors at UCLA were concerned about letting her go that long in utero and wanted her to be born at 39 weeks. So we scheduled an induction for 39 weeks. And so that's what we did. We scheduled the induction and then had an appointment several days before. So the induction was scheduled for the 9th. But we had an appointment on the 4th to go in for the final kind of scan to make sure she was okay and kind of solidify the plan. And then the plan was do that and then come back down a few days later to go have the induction. All this time, mind you, again, I'm unpacking, I'm settling into this house, I'm getting ready for this baby to come. I'm taking care of my 2 older children, and I'm also working. I have a couple things that I do. I'm an online writing teacher. I also am a life coach and a writer. And so I'm actively engaged in all the things that I'm doing besides being, a homemaker and caring for my children in my home. So, my maternity leave from my scheduled commitments, like teaching and coaching, was scheduled to start on the 3rd of November. And so, that day comes around. It was a Thursday, and it comes around, and I teach my final class, and it was the craziest thing. So all day Thursday, I was getting ready because the one thing that they had told me was when I go down on the 4th to UCLA for the ultrasound to scan and see if Faith was okay, see how she was doing, was to pack and be prepared to possibly have to stay down there until she was born, in case she wasn't doing well. And so I'm packing everything to prepare as if I'm going to stay down there, as if I was going to give birth that day, pretty much. I'm making sure that I have my birth kit or my hospital bag. I'm making sure that I have a diaper bag for her for, whenever I get to bring her home. I'm making sure that I have clothes for my husband and clothes for myself for staying down there for a while and all the things. And so I'm doing that on Thursday, getting everything kind of ready, and then go back and teach my classes. And then as soon as the class is over, it was so interesting. And the people who are familiar with the physiology of birth and the hormones involved, you probably like know exactly how this went down. Like, I can explain it, but it like it was so crazy. Literally, I ended my class and I took a deep breath, and I literally could feel like the oxytocin relaxing, like, and relaxin, like, flood me. It was like the craziest thing. It was that feeling of like, you know, when you like take a really deep breath and like you just sigh and like just release. It was just this like total like relaxation, peace, calm, like, okay, I'm done. Like, I'm done with all of my commitments. Time, you know, baby can come whenever she wants. And it just kind of flooded me. And I went out and, you know, cuddled my older kids and finished tidying up, made dinner, put my kids to bed. My husband was working late that night. He gets home, we have some dinner together, we chat, and then we start getting ready for bed. And again, my husband was working late, and we were gonna be going down the next day to LA. So we're like staying up, finishing the last little things. And so it's about 1 a.m. Finally, when we're both done getting ready for bed, we get in bed, lay down. My husband turns off the light, and I felt my water break in bed. I'm laying there, and my water broke. And I sat there and I was like, I think my water broke. So I go to the bathroom and check. My water broke. And so we headed down to the hospital in LA, which is again several hours away. So we you know, kind of did the mad scramble, get everything ready, and head down and headed to the hospital, got booked in. Once my water broke, my body kind of decided to like chill. Like, it was not contracting. I didn't go into active labor, which is interesting. So when we get to the hospital, they recommended that I augment with Pitocin so that we can get things going. So we did. And we just let that happen. And so finally later that evening, it finally kicked in. It took a very long time for it to kick in. When it finally did kick in, it was pretty quick. It kicked in, and she basically fell out. She really she just kind of, I didn't even have to push her out. She literally just came out with a contraction that I didn't actually do anything, which was kind of crazy. And she immediately got taken to the NICU. I got to touch her for 2 seconds while the cord was getting cut. She came out, put her on my belly for 2 seconds when I was able to touch her, and then they immediately took her and, you know, cut the cord and took her. And so, and then she was in the NICU, and she, was really struggling. She was not able to breathe on her own at all. And so they had to hook her up to an ECMO machine, which is basically an external heart-lung machine where, all of her blood was through a tube taken out of her body and through the machine where it took out the carbon dioxide, oxygenated it, added oxygen, and put it back in, and cleaned it and put it back in. And so she was on that ECMO machine within 12 hours of birth. And then it was really a waiting game. It was a long month. We were down there for a month. I'm not going to go into every single little detail of what happened, of the day-to-day, because there was so much every single day-to-day. And if that's something that you're interested in looking at, while we were down there live, I was live sharing, posting every day on social media. So if you go to my Instagram, which is at Amanda K Stout, or if you go to my Facebook, which is facebook.com/AKStout, you can see those, go back and see those on my blog, thesimplyjoyfullife.com, or you can go to amandakstout.com and go to the blog. Either one will take you there. I also have posts where I took all the content I posted on the day-to-day and I put it in a blog post form so that it's easy to go back and look at, because trying to recount all those blow-by-blows right now is going to take way too long. But it was it was hard. Obviously, it was very hard. You know, just had a baby. I haven't even really been able to, I couldn't hold her because she was attached to all these machines that were keeping her alive. And it was really challenging. And I'm several hours away from my other children. My mom took care of them while my husband and I were down in LA with Faith. And so we were down there for 26 days. And every day, for the first couple weeks, it really seemed like every day she was really kind of improving, and it really seemed like she was going to make it. And it was, there was improvement and improvement and improvement. And then it was slow, but it was every day there was, steps forward in the direction of healing and growth and overcoming. But then around Thanksgiving, well, let me backtrack. When she had her surgery, within 48 hours of being born, she was born on a Saturday. On Monday, she had the surgery, a repair surgery, which is where they went in and they pulled all the organs down out of the chest cavity and put them back into the abdominal cavity and then closed up the hole in her diaphragm. And what they discovered when that happened was that there was a lot more up there than they thought initially. She had all of her intestine, all of her stomach. I think it was her large and small intestine were both up there. Her stomach was up there, and her spleen was up in her chest. And so she had very little lung tissue, and all those organs were all up there compressing what little lung tissue there was. So it wasn't not able to adequately develop. And there were 2 holes in her diaphragm, which is part of why so much was up there. And so they pulled all that down. They did the repair surgery. But again, it seemed like she was going to be okay. And for the first several weeks, she seemed to be making improvement. It was slow, but it was happening. And then on Thanksgiving, they did what they called a clamp trial, which is where they kind of clamped the ECMO machine to see if her body could handle oxygenating her blood on her own. And she almost passed. It was so close, but she wasn't doing very well, and she still needed a lot of support and not enough support. They didn't, she was having to use the maximum amount of support to function, and her numbers were dropping, is what the doctor said, meaning that she just wasn't handling it. And so kept her on the ECMO. And literally that night we went home, and that night, or not home, but we went to the house we were staying at overnight. She just totally declined. Her lungs filled back up. Her lungs had been opening and being aerated, and she was starting to be able to breathe at least a little bit on her own. And her lungs completely collapsed, completely filled back up with liquid blood. And totally just nosedived. And that was Thanksgiving. And so that was when that's when I started to realize that, before then, when as the progress was starting to kind of be kind of slow, when it started hitting, she'd been on ECMO for 3 weeks, that started to the doctors were starting to be concerned, which meant made me start thinking oh, maybe she's not going to make it. When she nosedived like that, on Thanksgiving overnight, and I came in the next day and she was doing so poorly, that's when I kind of started realizing that maybe she's not going to make it. Maybe it may be that her healing isn't going to be here. And so we had to walk through that, my husband and I both together, and day by day make that decision. And the next day, that Saturday after Thanksgiving, meeting with the doctors, and the doctors pretty much telling us what needs to pretty much told us that they're still doing everything they can. They're not giving up yet, but the outlook was pretty bleak. And so they were willing to make some exceptions for us to let our children come meet her, which was such a blessing, letting our children meet her, especially, my son at the time was only about 18 months, so he didn't really get it. He was able to see her and kind of see, oh, baby, but he kind of didn't understand what was going on, obviously. My daughter, however, was 3.5, she knew what was going on. She knew that about the baby. She was so excited, and so knowing that she got to be able to see her sister and meet her and touch her and, kiss her little forehead was really important, and has been so important and been so helpful even afterwards. Now, as we're walking through the grieving process, being able to talk to my daughter and help her understand what happened to her sister, and her knowing and having that concrete, I did get to meet her, having that comfort. So we did that. But it really kind of came to that corner where we had been telling her and encouraging her to fight, and telling Faith, look, you can do this. Tell your lungs to open, tell your body to do what it needs to do to heal, and, really been encouraging her. But then we hit the point where we realized we need to just we need to now tell her that if she doesn't want to do that anymore, she doesn't have to. That it's okay. If she's too tired, if she's done, if she wants to stop fighting, that it's okay. That we'll let her stop fighting. We'll let her go if she wants to. And that was the hardest. That was really hard. I mean, obviously her dying was the hardest, but that was really hard. Getting to that point to know and to be able to tell her and let her choose and say, of course I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to fight for you for as long as you want me to. But if you're done, if you're ready to stop fighting and go rest and be with Jesus, that's okay. We'll be okay. You can go. And we told her that. We had that conversation with her. Because I really believe that kids know, I mean, obviously their brains are still developing and there's all that. But kids can hear the Holy Spirit just as much as we can. They know that God's there. They can, and I think that there's a sensitivity to God and the Spirit that we're actually called in the Bible to be like them in our sensitivity to the Holy Spirit and to the Lord. And so talking to her and letting her and telling her, she can communicate things she likes and dislikes and what she wants to do. And she did, and she showed us that she was tired and that she was done fighting, and her body just started really giving out. Because one of the things with ECMO machines is they're wonderful in the sense that they really can save lives, but if one is on them for too long, it starts actually causing a whole slew of complications and side effects that actually end up can end up killing you. And that's part of what ended up happening, is because Faith was on the ECMO machine for so long, it started breaking her blood and causing liver damage and kidney damage and damage to all her other organs. And so her body started shutting down. And so we had several days between, in the week following Thanksgiving, Sunday after Thanksgiving, my other children came to meet her. That Monday was the day, and then Monday, the next day, was the day that my husband and I talked to her and told her that it was okay if she was ready to go home, if she was ready to stop fighting and she wanted to go be with Jesus, that she could, and that we would do whatever she wanted. And then Tuesday and Wednesday, it was continuing to have that conversation with her and listen to her and care for her and love on her and just watch and see what is she wanting to do. Because it kind of seemed, one day, Tuesday, it seemed like she was maybe fighting and wanted to there was still hope. And that maybe she'll be healed this side of heaven. And then Wednesday night, it really kind of hit the point where it's like, okay, her lungs are opening a little bit. This is kind of our last shot, according to the doctors. The doctors kind of felt like this was our last shot. And so they scheduled for Thursday morning to do one more clamp trial to just see, how does she handle it? Do we feel like maybe she'll be able to function off of it? And so they did. And the minute that they turned off the machine, her heart rate dropped down so low. She almost, they were only able to clamp the machine for a minute. She was not able to stay off of it, at all. She wasn't able to do anything on her own. And that the night before, on Wednesday night, my husband and I had talked and prayed about it, and we knew, we were like, okay, like, Lord, this is like, we're surrendered and submitted to what's going to be best for her. You know what's going to be best for Faith. So you show us, Lord, that like when we do this clamp trial, if she passes, obviously we're going to keep fighting. But Lord, if it's, show us that if it's time to unplug the machines and let her go be with you, show us. And we both felt really clearly that the fact that she wasn't able to be off the machines was a pretty good indication, because the machine it was kind of one of those, either a long, we could keep her on the machines indefinitely till her body completely gave out, and it would be a long, drawn out, slow, painful thing, or we could turn off the machines and let it be fast and be in my arms, so that she would be in my arms peacefully, being held and loved on while she went to be with the Lord. And so that's what we did. That's what we decided to do. We knew, because we really felt like it would be much more, it was the best thing for her to let her be held and loved while she goes, instead of hooked up to a machine until her body just gives out and can't even handle the machine. And so we did, and we let her go be with the Lord, and that's what happened. That was her life. And it was hard. It was hard. But it was also such a faith-building experience, and still is. I mean, this only happened a few months ago. At the time of this posting recording, it's February 21st of 2023. So this was only not even 3 months ago. Almost 3 months ago that she passed. And one thing that I've had to wrestle with, because I really, especially while I was pregnant, I really I prayed, and I believe 100%, and I still do, this hasn't changed, I believe that God heals. God can heal miraculously and supernaturally. He can. He is able, and he is willing. He wants to heal us. That, like, Jesus came, he says in John 10:10, to give life to the full, abundant life. That's what he came for. Jesus conquered sin and death on the cross. But see, sometimes healing happens here. Sometimes it's a supernatural, miraculous testimony. It's wonderful. And that's what I was praying for and really asking the Lord for, was to heal her in such a miraculous, supernatural way that it would be undeniable that it was him. And that particular form of healing didn't happen, right? She wasn't healed here on earth. But the ultimate healing is in heaven. Because here on earth, there's still sickness, there's still pain, there's still death. This is a mortal, time-bound world that's full of a lot of evil and sin still. And so even when a supernatural, amazing testimony healing happens here on this earth, that's wonderful and amazing, and praise the Lord and point all glory to him for that. But that's actually not a complete healing. Because for those who are Christians, this world isn't actually our home. Our bodies are eventually going to break down and die and decay. And so any healing that happens in this life is temporary. And so walking through this has really helped in a new way shift perspective to my heavenly home. Because I know that my daughter is healed. I know that she's healthy and whole and totally healed in the arms of Jesus. And that is such a wonderful, glorious hope. And walking through this and getting to the point at the end of her life here on earth where really it was looking at her life and knowing, looking at the pain she was in, how hard it was for her, that it really would be better for her to be with Jesus and to let her go. It's hard as a mom. It's the worst decision you ever have to make. The hardest. Worst is the wrong word. The hardest. It is the absolutely hardest decision. But here's what's crazy. I had to make that decision in a really tangible way by literally letting her go be with Jesus. But here's the deal. I have the same level of no control over my other children's lives too. This experience showed me how I don't have control. I don't control it. I get to help influence, I get to pray, I get to show up and do the next best thing, the next thing that the Lord's leading me to do. But I don't get to say whether or not my children are going to follow the Lord. I get to do everything I can to lead them to Him. But I have no control over how their life turns out, what pain they go through. I have to trust Him. Just like I had to walk through into that practical day-to-day trust with my daughter, with faith, that He knew what was going to happen. And as I had to literally let her go be with Him, literally let Him have her. He wants that same level of surrender in trusting Him in all areas of life. And when we getting there is really, really peaceful. I think that's what's so interesting. I can share this with you. I can share this story with you. And relatively calmly, right? There were a couple of points there where there was some tearing up, but ultimately I'm not breaking down and freaking out because I know she's with God. I know she's in heaven, and I get to go see her eventually here. So what I really want to point back to as you hear the story of faith in her life, my prayer is that it will encourage you and inspire you to really take a look at what you believe. Where is your hope? Where is your hope? Because you see, if my hope were in this world, if this is all there is, if this world, this material world that we live in is all there is, and you know, I need to live my best life now, and this is all there is to life. Like, if this is all there is, then what I just experienced in the last year is literally the worst thing that could have happened to me. It's devastating. But see, my hope's not here. My hope isn't here. This is the place I'm journeying through. This is the place that I'm walking through on my way to my ultimate home, my true home. This is a journey. Our life on this earth is not the end all be all. It's a journey. It's a journey to the end all be all, which is Christ in heaven, in the new kingdom that he's going to create, that he's going to establish. And so because that is my hope, that is my home, it's not devastating. It's painful. It is painful. But it was a see you later. I'm going to get to see her again. And so if you've lost a loved one, do you know if you're going to see them again? That's something to explore. Where is your hope? Are you placing your hope here on this earth and the things of this earth? Because if you are, it's not going to last. You're going to face some crisis, something, whether it's the loss of a job, whether it's the loss of a loved one, whether it's a natural disaster, whether it's whatever it is. You're going to face something, you're going to face a crisis, and you're going to realize that whatever it is you've been placing your hope on, if it's not God, if it's not Christ, it is going to fail you. And so my prayer more than anything, as you hear the testimony of who Faith was and what her life was and how it's impacted me, and I'll share more about that and the things I've been learning in coming weeks and months, I'm sure, as the journey unfolds. But my prayer is that it would encourage you to take a look and choose to put your hope in Christ. Because that is he is the only thing that will never disappoint. He's the only thing that will give you peace, even in the crappiest circumstances. I was able to walk through that with peace. I am able to walk through it with peace. Are there days that I sob and cry till there's nothing left to come out? There's no more tears. There's no more cries. Absolutely. I just did 2 nights ago. Because it hurts. But I don't stay there. I don't stay in the hurt. I move on to the next moment. I feel it when it comes up, and then I move on to the next moment, because I know that because I'm here, that I have a purpose on this earth, because God put me here. And I know I'll get to see my baby again. So, friends, I hope this was an encouragement to you. I hope this is a blessing to you. If you have any questions, please feel free to pop them in the comments or shoot me an email at coachamanda@amandakStout.com. I will be more than happy to either respond directly to your email with an answer to your question, or depending on what the question is, do another video sharing the answer. And I hope and pray that you found this encouraging, interesting, or a blessing. And if you found it encouraging or interesting in any way, please share it. Let's share this story. Let's share what you've learned. Have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you again sometime soon. Bye.